So I'm going to talk about how to align your career with your Ikigai. So we've all had those moments where it's like, who am I? What am I doing with my life? And it's such a universal thing. I know that this happened to me a couple times at least. And this concept of Ikigai can help with that. And even if you're someone who has got it all figured out and you know who you are and what you're doing, Ikigai can help you as well, because Ikigai helps you to have strength in times when things can be challenging. So for example, as researchers, sometimes we uncover things in our research that's quite problematic, and we have to let our superiors know, or let the client know, or let the higher ups know this. And sometimes this information is really inconvenient and people just don't want to hear it. Also, Ikigai can help you find joy in the struggle, basically. For example, if you're learning a new skill and it's kind of dragging and you're like, oh, why did I sign up for this course? Or like, oh, my life is getting really busy now and like, I don't want to do this in my free time. Ikigai can help kind of center you back and remember why you're doing this and give you energy and actually enjoy the process of learning again. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this talk. So I'm going to talk about what is Ikigai, this magical thing that I'm talking about, how to find it, and also I'll share how I aligned my career with my Ikigai. So first things first, what is Ikigai? So Ikigai is a Japanese concept and also basically like a way of living, a way of seeing the world. The direct translation is, so Iki means like life, living, breath, being alive, that kind of thing. And then Gai or Kai means worth, purpose, result, that kind of thing. And so Ikigai, the concept, means the thing that makes life worth living, or life's purpose, or the thing that makes life meaningful. And in Japan, this concept, how it plays out is that people kind of like don't ever retire, really, at least in the traditional sense. Often folks are still quite integrated into their society and they continue to do the things that they love until they are physically unable to do so. So because of reasons related to their health or something else like that. Because Ikigai is so integrated into a person's identity and sense of belonging. So even if you're not doing something formally as work, you transition into ways of continuing to contribute. Okay, so that's what Ikigai is. Let's also talk about what Ikigai is not. So Ikigai has come over and gained popularity in the West, and in doing so, some of the essence has gotten kind of lost in translation. So there's three main ways that Ikigai is kind of misconceptualized in Western cultures. So the first thing is that Ikigai doesn't necessarily have to do with work at all, or money, or status, or a job. Ikigai kind of has two areas. So one is around self-actualization, like mastery of a craft. And the other is around sense of belonging, so commitment to the well-being of a group. And so you can see how that can relate to a workplace or your colleagues or your practitioners group, but it doesn't necessarily. So there's that little nuance around what's meaningful. It doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily about what is paying you. The second common misconception is that it has to be this grand thing. There's so much pressure on people to kind of find like, what's your passion? Just follow your passion, or like, what's your purpose? And that is kind of quite intimidating, actually. And Ikigai doesn't have to be that. It's actually, Ikigai is often something that's very simple, getting back to basics kind of thing. Or it can even be a couple things. It doesn't have to be just like one big thing. So just to give you an example, my Ikigai is helping people understand each other. Very simple, right? And a friend of mine who's a designer, her Ikigai is helping make technology intuitive for people. And another friend, engineer, his Ikigai is helping to build things for society that are useful. So the third common misconception of Ikigai is that it is a set destination, which it is not. Ikigai is more about the process and the practice of a craft, or the practice of doing the thing, the journey, not like the end destination that you're trying to get to. It's not about like some high achievement. So that's one part. And then the other part is that this Ikigai that we're trying to align to, it can also evolve as the world evolves and as you evolve. Ikigai is also kind of evolving and changing. So it's not one fixed thing. It's the process, and it's also something that can change. Okay, so that's good for the definitions. We got it. And now we want to talk about how do we actually go about finding your Ikigai. Luckily, we are researchers, and it's really just about getting curious about yourself and using your research methods on yourself. So trying to figure out, what is it that I love? What do I really enjoy doing? Also, what am I good at? What would my friends say are my strengths? And even paying attention to things like, if I hear someone else is doing something and I feel really jealous about it, like, oh, that's really interesting. What is it that I like about that I wish I could do? And this is just a starting point, right? Like, we all have to start somewhere. When I was starting my career, my Ikigai at the time was saving the planet. Super broad, but that really spoke to me at the time, and that was important to me at the time. And it was a really good starting point, and it helped me to kind of get to where I am now. So once you have a starting point of an Ikigai, then you want to hone and deepen it. And one way we can think about doing this is similar to when we go to a restaurant and order some food. So you might look at the menu and see spaghetti bolognese and think, great, I'm gonna order that. I love it. I know it's good. I want to know how these people this restaurant makes it. So I'm gonna order that. And someone else, or maybe you just in a different mood, you might look at the menu and think, you know what? I kind of want to try these other things that I haven't tried before and see if I like it, see if it's something that I might want to order again in the future. But I don't know yet because I've never tried it. And sometimes this is a bit based on like a person's personality, whether you want to kind of go with what you know or you want to kind of branch out and see what else you might like. And we can take that thinking into deepening your Ikigai. So the first thing to think about is the exploration. And so this has to do with kind of sampling a lot of different things to figure out what it is that you really enjoy. And the idea here too is creating routines or creating almost experiments to try out different things and step out of your comfort zone. So you might try something new for 2 weeks, like nature photography for 2 weeks, and see if you like it. And then you might try pottery or something. I mean, the point is that you're kind of sampling and trying different things to see what you end up wanting to learn more about. Also, journaling is really important during this time to kind of capture what's going on for you and see what things you want to do more of. So exploration can include even doing informational interviews as well with folks that are doing something different than what you're doing, and a lot of research really, and just following what kind of is piquing your interest. So the second approach is exploitation. So this is ordering the thing on the menu that you already have heard about and you already know is going to be good. So how this applies to Ikigai is that you start with something that you are good at. Maybe you're not like passionate about it, but you know that you're good at it, and you keep going and allow your passion or to emerge from there. And the idea is that as you get better at it, you kind of understand the nuance and the complexity, and it becomes more interesting, and you learn about different specializations that you can go into, and this can all become part of your Ikigai. And so different ways that you can go down the exploitation route is you can teach. So this can be like lunch and learns, or it can be a full course, whatever opportunities you find, or it could just be like teaching it to a friend. But the act of like explaining and teaching, you have to be pretty clear about what you are explaining, and you have to know the subject matter pretty well. So it's actually a really good forcing function. Also things like becoming a mentor and like having a mentee, because the mentee will ask you questions that you maybe take for granted by now, or you wouldn't have thought of before, and it kind of pushes you to have different perspectives about the craft that you have been doing. So really great way. And then of course, master classes and different courses in areas of your own craft already. And then of course, like meeting with peers and jamming on what is at the edge of each of your learning at that time. The truth is that it's not necessarily one or the other. Often we're kind of doing a blend of both. And with either approach, like we're never done anyways. So it's constantly kind of revisiting and looking at how we can deepen and hone our Ikigai. So let's ground this in a real life example. So I mentioned earlier that my Ikigai now is helping people understand each other. And I also mentioned that my starting point Ikigai was saving the planet. So how do you get from saving the planet to helping people understand each other? So why don't I chat you through kind of the journey that I took, and some of this will start to make more sense. And as you're listening, if you kind of think about when I'm using exploration versus exploitation, you should see that also emerging. So when I first started out, I was working in property management, and I started to learn about how older buildings were huge greenhouse gas emitters. And so it was a big problem in terms of like a sustainability point of view. And so then I started learning about how there's like green buildings and sustainable infrastructure as a field that was gaining prominence and something that I could work in. And I thought, that's definitely what I want to do. And so at that point, my Ikigai was all about like saving the planet and more of an environmental point of view. So I enrolled in a grad program to study that more. It was a business program, but with a strong sustainability element. And while I was in school, I was exposed to all kinds of different ways of using business. And I learned about social entrepreneurship and innovation in government and thought like, wow, this is really cool. So I wanted to go more in that direction. And so my Ikigai had shifted at that point to being more about leveraging business for societal good. So then through different kinds of work opportunities, so work terms and internships and full-time positions, as well as I was doing a lot of writing at the time, like on my blog, and some public speaking and organizing meetup groups and just really trying to get out to events and all that kind of stuff, talking to people, all of the things. I realized, actually, I really want to do design research in a creative agency. That's where the kinds of things I want to do for work. And my Ikigai at that time was shifting to amplifying and advocating for voices that may not otherwise be heard. So I was pursuing that route through different work opportunities. I started another meetup group and was also learning a lot about machine learning at the time and meeting different people who are working in that field, doing some informational interviews, all that kind of stuff. And I realized, actually, I really want to do design research for machine learning or for AI. And so my Ikigai then got honed again to helping people understand each other. So as you can see, it, kind of evolves along the way. So figuring out what your Ikigai is just a really great grounding force that helps you make all kinds of decisions about the work you want to do, where you want to live, who you want to be friends with even. It's a very useful lens to kind of look at your whole world. And again, back to the thing about finding courage when you need to. If you know what drives you and what's important to you, it doesn't become a question of courage anymore. It's about what you must do. And then even for the part about finding energy and joy in things that might be a bit of a struggle, like a new course, even if the course is like not very exciting at the time, it ladders up to this bigger thing that you're trying to do. And so you just have more drive to keep going. So just to recap, there's kind of 4 things that we want to remember for sure. So the one thing is that Ikigai is not tied to money, right? It's tied to meaning. The second thing being that it's not some big grand thing. It's actually pretty simple when you start distilling it down to what it's really about for you. And it can be a couple things. It doesn't have to be just one big thing. If you're not sure what your Ikigai is, one way to approach it is exploring or exploiting, right? Just like when you're looking at the menu. And then the last thing to remember is that it's always gonna keep changing. As you evolve and as the world evolves, your Ikigai will evolve as well, and it's something that you want to keep revisiting and make sure still makes sense for you. So now you know all about Ikigai. You can use it to remember who you are and how you want to use your one life. And next time when you're thinking, what am I doing with my life, you can answer confidently. So thank you.